Yemen, often described as a nation shaped by years of relentless conflict, but what lies beneath the surface goes far beyond what the headlines tell us. There is a deeper, more enigmatic side to everyday life here, one that remains shrouded in mystery and seldom explored. Join us as we journey into the hidden layers of this fascinating country, unraveling the intricate realities that define its people, culture, and way of life. Number 13. A nation divided by faith and conflict. Yemen is a predominantly Muslim nation divided between Sunni and Shiite communities. Sunnis account for slightly more than half of the population, while Shiites make up nearly the other half. Yet the divisions here extend far beyond matters of religion. The rift between these groups is deeply rooted in history, influenced by regional powers, and has only intensified during Yemen's prolonged civil conflict. Saudi Arabia supports Yemen's Sunni-led government, while Iran backs the Shiite Houthi rebels. Though Islam dominates Yemen's religious identity, smaller groups persist, such as the Ismailis, Imamites, and even a small community of Jews. These Jewish families, for safety, publicly adopted Islam while secretly continuing their Jewish traditions. This division isn't just a theoretical issue, it profoundly affects the daily lives of the Yemeni people. Religion is woven into Yemen's identity, shaping its culture and customs. But beyond faith, how do traditional values influence the rhythm of everyday life? Number 12. Patriarchal structures and conservative culture. Yemen is a country rich in cultural heritage, but traditional societal structures can create significant challenges for women and children. Deeply rooted customs and interpretations of religious teachings often limit social freedoms and restrict economic opportunities for many. In much of Yemen, men typically serve as the primary breadwinners, trading goods in bustling local markets, while women focus on running households and raising families. On average, women care for 5 to 7 children and face significant obstacles when it comes to accessing education or pursuing employment. The ongoing conflict has disrupted schools across the country, making education especially hard to access for girls. Family expectations often reinforce male authority, with fathers, husbands, and brothers holding significant influence within the household. In some cases, issues like domestic disputes are seen as private matters, and a lack of clear legal protections leaves many without recourse or support. What stood out to you most about Yemen's current situation? Do you think education could unlock new possibilities and transform social and economic dynamics in the country? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But what happens when these deeply ingrained societal norms collide with the challenges of gender inequality? Number 11. Issues of gender inequality. In Yemen, women play essential roles in supporting their families and communities, yet they face significant challenges in having their voices heard in politics and public life. Despite international efforts to involve women in peace discussions, their participation remains minimal. Many women adhere to traditional customs, such as wearing veils and seeking guidance from male guardians, fathers, husbands, or brothers. This practice reinforces a protective role for men, often impacting women's independence and decision-making. Women, who make up nearly half of the population, experience gender bias from a young age. Boys often receive more privileges, while women face limited protection from mistreatment. This bias influences every aspect of life: homes, schools, workplaces, and society as a whole, adding further scrutiny to women's participation in public life. However, private gatherings provide opportunities for women to connect and celebrate away from societal pressures, though these spaces are often inaccessible to outsiders due to cultural norms. Social life in Yemen is largely gender segregated. Family events and celebrations are typically divided by gender, and women are often accompanied by a male guardian, or mahram for security. While some view this tradition as restrictive, others see it as a necessary measure in a society where safety concerns are widespread. Yemen's ranking in the year 2024 Global Gender Gap Report highlights the persistence of inequality. Female literacy stands at 35% compared to 75% for men, limiting women's economic opportunities. These challenges are especially pronounced in rural areas, where men participate in market activities while women manage household responsibilities. The ongoing conflict and economic hardships have only deepened these disparities, increasing women's reliance on male relatives. With such entrenched gender inequalities, what does this mean for women's safety and freedom in public life? Before diving deeper, I have a quick 10-second request for all of you listening. If you want to support this channel, hit the notification bell and subscribe. It makes a huge difference, and I promise to keep improving this show for you. Deal? Number 10. Impact of nightlife on security and the role of organized groups. In Yemen, nightlife once offered a brief sense of escape from daily struggles. However, as conflict escalated, the streets fell under the influence of armed groups, replacing freedom with unease. Where government oversight once existed, these groups now impose their own rules, regulate gatherings, and enforce restrictions. Cities like Aden are divided into zones, each controlled by different factions. While these groups claim to protect their communities, they often expand their power by placing levies on local businesses, including nightlife venues. Some venues have been forced to comply with their rules, while others have been repurposed for illicit activities. The trade of khat, a local stimulant, has grown significantly, providing a major source of revenue for these groups, along with the circulation of more dangerous substances. With the government struggling to maintain authority and police forces stretched thin, these groups have taken on unofficial enforcement roles, creating a parallel system of power. For residents, especially young people, nightlife has shifted from a source of joy to a source of fear. Venturing out at night now means navigating restrictions and passing through checkpoints. One resident from Aden likened it to walking on thin ice, describing how young people are sometimes detained for being out during unofficial curfews set by these factions, not the government. This evolving reality raises critical questions: can Yemen's cities regain stability, or has the influence of these groups become too entrenched to reverse? As control shifts hands, new vulnerabilities have emerged. The question remains, who is most at risk in this ongoing struggle for power? Number 9. Concerns around human exploitation and trafficking. Yemen, a gateway to Saudi Arabia, represents a fragile hope for migrants from the Horn of Africa. But for many, the reality is far more dangerous than imagined. The journey across the Red Sea is perilous, with risks ranging from overcrowded boats to ruthless smugglers. Instead of finding safety, many migrants face exploitation and hardship. According to Amnesty International, up to 50,000 migrants cross into Yemen each year, with many falling prey to individuals who exploit their vulnerabilities. Temporary camps, often controlled by armed groups, frequently serve as detention sites. Survivors share harrowing accounts of enduring harsh and degrading conditions, experiences that stand in stark contrast to Yemen's cultural values of compassion and justice. In areas where government authority is weak, local armed factions wield significant control. A United Nations report revealed that over 90% of exploitation cases are linked to these groups, underscoring the lack of proper oversight. As one survivor told a BBC journalist, "We thought Yemen would be a gateway to freedom, but it became a place of suffering." Yemen's ongoing crisis has left its own citizens in dire straits. More than a decade of conflict has pushed over 80% of the population into poverty, creating an environment where exploitation thrives. Without a strong central government or effective legal systems, many violations go unaddressed. Despite these challenges, efforts to provide hope persist. Yemeni activists and NGOs work tirelessly to document abuses and protect vulnerable individuals, often at great personal risk. Organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières continue to provide aid despite facing numerous obstacles. Their work offers a glimmer of hope, but without stronger international support, progress remains slow and difficult. How can a nation so deeply rooted in values endure such suffering? This stark contrast between Yemen's cultural ideals and its reality raises profound questions about resilience and humanity. For viewers, this is not just another story, it is a call to reflect and consider ways to take action. Why is this humanitarian crisis so pervasive in a country known for its strong moral traditions? And how do these struggles shape the lives of millions? Number 8. The ongoing humanitarian crisis and its repercussions. Yemen is in the grip of a severe humanitarian crisis, leaving millions struggling for survival. Years of conflict, economic collapse, and political instability have deeply weakened the nation. According to the United Nations, more than 24 million people require humanitarian assistance, with over 5 million at risk of acute food shortages. Once thriving communities now lie in ruins. The nation's infrastructure has crumbled, making it nearly impossible for hospitals, schools, and essential public services to operate effectively. Access to clean water is scarce, and the healthcare system is under immense pressure. Reports from Doctors Without Borders indicate that over half of Yemen's healthcare facilities are no longer functional. Families face daily battles to meet even their most basic needs. Diseases such as cholera, malaria, and measles are spreading rapidly, fueled by a lack of clean water and inadequate sanitation. According to UNICEF, Yemen is enduring the world's largest cholera outbreak, with over 1 million reported cases. Malnutrition is another alarming issue. The World Food Program estimates that nearly half of Yemen's population suffers from chronic malnutrition. Many parents are forced to make heartbreaking choices, prioritizing food for their children while going hungry themselves. Displacement is at an all-time high. The Internal Displacement Monitoring Center reports that over 4 million Yemenis have been forced to flee their homes in search of safety. In temporary camps, families endure harsh conditions with minimal access to shelter, water, and medical care. Children are out of school, and many have lost one or both parents. This crisis is not just about surviving, it is about preserving dignity and hope amid relentless adversity. But there is another hidden battle that rarely comes to light. What happens when freedom and human rights are at stake? Number 7. Detentions and human rights issues. As various factions have seized control over different areas of Yemen, each group has imposed its own rules. This power dynamic has led to widespread reports of arbitrary detentions and allegations of mistreatment in detention facilities. A report from the year 2024 by Human Rights Watch revealed that many Yemenis are being held without trial, often accused of vague offenses such as supporting rival factions or expressing dissenting opinions. These detentions do not solely target combatants. Journalists, activists, and civilians have also been caught in the crossfire, often with little to no access to legal support. In the north, areas under Houthi control have seen political detainees and prisoners of war enduring harsh conditions. Meanwhile, in the south, under UAE-backed forces, activists and members of opposing groups live in constant fear of being detained. A United Nations report confirmed that such detentions often occur without proper judicial oversight. Amnesty International's year 2024 findings shed light on the continuation of these issues, which affect not only political prisoners but also marginalized communities. This climate of fear has become a defining feature of Yemeni society. Journalists are particularly at risk, with over 30 detained since the conflict began, often accused of espionage or held in undisclosed locations. The Committee to Protect Journalists highlights how these risks have made it increasingly difficult for independent voices to report on the ground realities. Yemen's fractured legal system further complicates matters. Each faction enforces its own rules, often ignoring national laws and international standards. The United Nations Human Rights Council's year 2024 inquiry revealed that many detainees remain in custody without charges, while efforts to secure their release face significant obstacles. These ongoing detentions raise serious human rights concerns. But beyond these challenges, Yemen faces another growing crisis: its collapsing economy. The question is, can the country find a path to recovery? Number 6. Economic challenges and increased poverty. Yemen, once celebrated for its thriving trade and prosperity, is now grappling with a severe economic crisis brought on by years of conflict, political instability, and governance challenges. Today, more than 3/4 of the population lives in extreme poverty, surviving on less than $2 a day. Agriculture, a cornerstone of the Yemeni economy, has been significantly affected by ongoing water shortages. Over half the population struggles to access clean water, leading to reduced crop yields and forcing many farmers to abandon their land in search of better opportunities. Yemen's modest oil reserves could provide some economic relief, but outdated infrastructure, administrative inefficiencies, and political divisions have hindered progress. While neighboring countries build wealth from oil, Yemen's economy continues to decline. Since the conflict began in the year 2015, the country has suffered over $100 billion in economic losses, with its GDP contracting sharply. Basic necessities have become unaffordable for many households. Inflation, currency instability, and market disruptions have driven prices to unsustainable levels, leaving more than 16 million Yemenis in a state of food insecurity. For countless families, survival means making impossible choices between food, medicine, and education. Over 2 million children are currently out of school, many forced to work to help support their families. Amid these challenges, there are glimmers of hope. International efforts are tapping into Yemen's renewable energy potential, particularly solar power, to provide stable electricity in remote areas. Projects led by organizations such as IRENA aim to bolster rural communities, offering a pathway to stability and reducing dependence on costly fuel imports. In a country facing immense challenges, the promise of sustainable energy represents a beacon of hope for a better future. With so many relying on informal jobs to make ends meet, what risks do these unregulated opportunities pose for Yemeni families? Number 5. Informal economy and its effects. Years of conflict and economic instability have reshaped Yemen's economy, forcing much of the population to rely on informal work for survival. Street vendors and small traders have become the backbone of the economy, selling everything from basic goods to khat, a widely consumed local stimulant. For many, these makeshift jobs are a lifeline, yet they lack the protections and stability offered by formal employment. According to the World Bank's year 2024 report, informal activities now account for nearly 80% of Yemen's economy. This shift reflects the scarcity of job opportunities and the absence of reliable support systems. However, the unregulated nature of this economy leaves workers vulnerable to exploitation, with no guarantees of fair wages or basic protections. The sale of khat illustrates both the importance and the consequences of Yemen's informal sector. While it provides crucial income for many families, its cultivation consumes valuable resources such as water and farmland, worsening the country's food crisis. In cities like Aden and Sana'a, powerful groups have taken control of key markets, charging fees, regulating trade routes, and using their influence to sustain their operations. Life within Yemen's informal economy requires constant adaptation. People move between seasonal jobs, street vending, and sometimes unregulated activities to make ends meet. Women, in particular, face additional challenges due to societal restrictions, often confined to selling goods on the streets. The United Nations Development Program has warned that this lack of regulation increases the risk of human rights abuses and unregulated trade, further destabilizing the economy. Despite these challenges, there are efforts to drive change. NGOs and international organizations are stepping in to offer vocational training and microloans, creating alternative income sources. In the year 2024, the International Labor Organization launched a pilot project in southern Yemen aimed at formalizing small businesses. However, resistance from local groups and traders continues to hinder progress. As Yemen's economy adapts to survive, one question remains: what happens to social stability when unrest becomes the norm? Number 4. Civil unrest and its social impacts. The conflict in Yemen began as a political power struggle but has since escalated into a far more complex situation with profound social impacts. The weakening of the central government has allowed armed groups to seize control, leaving communities to grapple with significant changes in relationships and stability. According to the United Nations Humanitarian Report of year 2024, more than 4 million people have been displaced, and the humanitarian crisis shows little sign of improvement. Beyond the visible devastation, the conflict has deeply strained Yemen's social fabric. Once known for its tight-knit communities, Yemen now faces a growing sense of anxiety and mistrust as families are torn apart and trust between neighbors erodes. In cities such as Aden and Taiz, the divisions are particularly stark. Communities are split along political and tribal lines, creating an atmosphere of caution and fear. A local activist described it as a constant feeling of unease, not knowing if your neighbor or even a family member might have ties to groups with harmful intentions. As the central government's authority continues to wane, militias have stepped in, controlling resources and enforcing their own rules. According to the International Crisis Group's year 2024 analysis, more than 70% of the population now lives under the influence of these factions, each with its own agenda. For many Yemenis, this new reality is marked by uncertainty and complex dynamics. In areas like Al-Hudaydah, businesses are often forced to pay unofficial taxes to avoid trouble, and residents face frequent checkpoints that make movement difficult. These challenges not only disrupt daily life but also take a heavy toll on Yemen's youth. With unemployment rates exceeding 50%, young people are left with few opportunities, making them vulnerable to recruitment by extremist groups offering promises of purpose and stability. However, armed conflict is not the only challenge Yemenis must contend with. How do environmental crises compound the struggles they already face? Number 3. Environmental crises and their consequences. Yemen is grappling with a severe environmental crisis that is profoundly affecting the lives of its people. Water resources are depleting at an alarming rate, with more than half the population experiencing shortages, particularly in rural areas. Farmers across the country report that wells are drying up and fields are becoming barren due to the shrinking water supply. Agriculture, a cornerstone of Yemeni life, is under immense pressure, leading to widespread difficulties and worsening food shortages. Per capita water availability has dropped to about 100 cubic meters per year, placing Yemen among the most water-scarce nations in the world. Desertification is advancing across Yemen, driven by overgrazing, deforestation, and the effects of climate change. Nearly 70% of agricultural land is at risk of degradation, threatening the livelihoods of countless families. Once fertile regions are becoming inhospitable, forcing families to migrate to urban centers or temporary camps where resources are even scarcer. Coastal communities are also feeling the strain. Issues like overfishing, pollution, and economic hardships have severely impacted the fishing industry. Fishermen in Al Hudaydah report dwindling catches, raising concerns about the future of their trade. At the same time, climate change is amplifying these challenges. Flash floods and prolonged droughts are becoming more frequent, with erratic rainfall damaging crops and homes. In Hadramaut, for example, recent floods displaced thousands of residents, highlighting the devastating effects of these environmental changes. As resources grow increasingly scarce, social tensions are mounting. Water and land disputes are becoming more common in a nation already grappling with instability. Families facing these challenges are struggling to secure enough food and maintain basic living conditions. While international aid continues to flow into Yemen, it does not always reach those who need it most. Could Yemen's systemic vulnerabilities be the reason why? Number 2. Issues with humanitarian aid and systemic vulnerabilities. In the past decade, billions of dollars in aid have flowed into Yemen to address hunger, provide clean water, and support healthcare. Despite this, nearly 16 million Yemenis face food insecurity, with 5 million in crisis, according to UNICEF. So, where is the aid going? Access remains a critical issue. Political conflicts and security challenges often block aid deliveries by closing roads, restricting ports, or limiting distribution routes. Reports indicate that some local authorities or groups may redirect supplies, complicating efforts to help those in need. This leaves many vulnerable populations struggling, as aid doesn't always reach its intended recipients. Additionally, mismanagement has been reported. A year 2024 Yemen Data Project investigation found nearly 1/5 of essential aid may have been diverted or misused. One mother in Sana'a shared her struggle with humanitarian workers, explaining how difficult it was to get aid for her family. Logistical difficulties further complicate the situation. While food assistance is crucial, organizations like the World Food Program highlight the urgent need for clean water, healthcare, and mental health services. In rural areas, water purification remains a pressing issue, yet food supplies often receive greater focus. Funding shortages are another significant hurdle. In 2024, the World Food Program reduced rations for 8 million people in Yemen due to insufficient funds, even as food prices rose. A father in Aden described this as living on borrowed time. As logistical challenges, funding gaps, and systemic issues persist, Yemen's crisis remains complex. Can the global community find ways to ensure aid reaches those who need it most? Even with these vast challenges, Yemen faces another deeply rooted issue in its traditional norms and practices. How can the country address the growing problem of family conflicts? Number 1. Domestic violence and efforts to address it. In Yemen, family conflict is a persistent challenge rooted in traditional norms that often frame it as a private matter. Long-standing beliefs about male authority can contribute to control within households. While 1 in 4 Yemeni women reports experiencing physical or emotional harm, many others endure these issues silently, constrained by fear and societal expectations. The legal system offers limited support, as existing laws often reflect traditional customs and lack clear definitions of these issues. Without strong protections, those affected may hesitate to seek help, fearing judgment or exclusion from their communities. This leaves many women feeling isolated, with little access to mental health support. Cultural expectations to remain quiet further deepen this isolation, making it harder to address the emotional toll of such experiences. Despite these challenges, there are signs of progress. Organizations like the Yemeni Women's Union provide safe spaces, legal aid, and healthcare services. In the year 2023, activists pushed for legal reforms to recognize family conflict as a crime, sparking meaningful discussions despite significant hurdles. Even amid Yemen's ongoing conflict, international support has helped sustain these critical efforts. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. I'm sure you'll love this content. Comment below about the next country you want to see featured on our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Thanks for joining us. Leave a comment, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting videos. See you in the next video.